Hello, my name is Omoloro and I am demonstrating building an API gateway using Netflix's Falcor framework. So to get started, I'll show what we want to accomplish in the end. We have a JSON snippet here that has a username, my name, first name, last name, and the balance. Balance is how much money the person has in their account. So these four things come from two different services. The username, first name, and last name come from the user service, and the balance comes from the wallet service. So we will be using Falcor to combine the responses from these different services to get a chunk that looks like this for a user. We'll go on to create a web browser client application for Falcor. This application will show the basics of what you need to consume services from a Falcor gateway. It's going to be an HTML file, HTML5 file. The basic things we expect the HTML head and body. We're going to put a few scripts in the source. We'll include the Falcor browser JavaScript file, and we will declare our custom script as well. First thing we create is our Falcor model. The model is essentially the foundation of everything we need to understand about Falcor. It's the abstract representation of our data. So all the interactions that we make on the data will be through the Falcor model. So in the Falcor model, we have a source field, and that defines where the data is coming from. So it could be from the cache, from the model cache, or it could be from a remote source, an HTTP data source, as we are going to have for this demo. So for now, I'll leave that field blank. We'll fill it in when we have the service up. And that's all we need to do for now for the client. We may want to consider downloading the browser.js file so that we have a local copy. It's even advisable to do that because we don't want to rely on the file being in the same state that we expect it to be. So I'll do that now, download a local copy of the browser.js file. And I'll replace the reference with the reference to the local file. The next thing we will do is to use the model to get the JSON path response from the server. Now, JSON path is a graph way of representing a JSON object that Falcor uses. It's very interesting, and it's worth studying the documentation for them. Many different ways of representing this JSON path. This one has three parts. The first part is users, which represents the path, the actual URL path that will be served from our Express app. 123 represents the identifier for the resource that we'll be using. That's like user with ID 123, and then the rest of them, the username, first name, last name, and balance represent the fields that will be pulled from that resource. So when you use JSON path and Falcor, you're expected to explicitly state all the data that you want back. You can't do wildcards on the fields. You only get back what you ask for, and you're required to ask for things specifically. The response of the request is sent back in a promise, and that's the response obviously we see there being passed into the function. So we can do whatever we want on the response there. But for now, all we will do is to log the request and to print the output out as a JSON to the screen, and we'll leave it at that for this demonstration. Next, we'll work on building the user service. This will be a PHP application that just gives a list of users or gives a single user when the key is entered. So it's a very simple application. We'll just do a single index.php page just to demonstrate what we're trying to do. Okay, so we'll begin our PHP script. We start by capturing the server object and getting the request from there, and next we specify the path that will be handled by the file. So we're handling all requests to /users, and that's the first thing we're checking in the string position function. Check if there's /users in the URL. If not, send the error which is what we'll define next. It's a JSON error response. Now we'll just send false for all our errors because either the user is not found or the path is not found. We just send false for them. So we'll go on with the main flow of the program. We will try and get the user ID from the URL. So we'll do a couple of string replacements there, replacing the slash users and then the leading slash. Then after we do that, we'll try and fetch the user from the user array, and if the user ID is set, we will return the user if the user is set. If not, we will return the whole array of users for request to slash users. So we create the user with user ID 123, username Omoloro, first name Omoloro, last name Oyegoke, date of birth 12th of April, and the status is active. And then we create another user 124, the next user Isaac Asimov, and we fill in all the data for him. So we have the get all users function and return the list of all the users we have registered on our system. Then next we go to the function to create to retrieve information for a specific user, and that's get user data, sending the user ID, and it was supposed to search that array returned by get all users and give the array for a single user. So that's what's happening now. When we don't find a user, we throw an exception that's caught by the catch in the main stream and just sends a 404 error. So that's pretty much all we need to do in this file. Of course, we need to create the send success function to send successful data when we have it. And yeah, our endpoints for fetching the list of all users and fetching a single user are complete. We change that string to a boolean, and yeah, we should be done with that. And the next thing I like to do is to not use localhost in my URLs, to use Apache virtual hosts for my routing. It's just a personal preference. So this is my virtual host file. We have the document root pointing to the path where I have the user service, and then very important, the directory directives for rewrite rules. So next we test out a few endpoints and everything looks okay. So we're done with our user service. Next we build our wallet service. It's a node, so it does pretty much the same thing as the user service except returns a different set of fields. So I'll just fly through this one. So as I go through this, two things will probably jump out at you. Firstly, you notice that I don't like the nesting functions inside other functions. I prefer to just name them and have them stand on their own. And also you see that we only defined a wallet for one user, 1234, which you recall maps to the Omoloro user. Isaac Asimov has no balance, and you'll see why shortly. We want to be able to see how Falcor behaves where we do not have data supplied for one of the endpoints. So I also do the virtual host thing for wallets, but here it's a bit different. I am going to be routing from Apache, even though it's served in Node, because I want to still listen on 80, and then Apache does a proxy pass to port 1667 where my node is listening. Checking the endpoints out shows that things are okay, so we are good to start working on the API gateway itself now. We start by installing our dependencies. The three major ones are Falcor Express, Falcor Router, and Express. And when we've done that, we create the Express application in our server.js file. We go on to define the routes in the callback for that Falcor Express data source route. And there you see us declaring the routes that this particular route will be able to handle in the route field. Then get shows what will happen when a get request is sent to that route by a model. So we have get and then the function that is called taking the path set as an argument. The path set is from the route above. So you'll see that many of the things that we do there are with reference to the string that's in the route. We use the request promise module to handle our requests. The request URL for the first route is local.user.com/users, then the user ID, because this handles only the requests that go to the user service So that's the request for username, first name, and last name. Then the result is an object. We pass that from the string. Remember that the API endpoints for getting users return JSON strings. So we pass that into a JSON object. That's the var user object that we have there. And then we get the data out. We continue by initializing a few objects that we are going to populate with the data. We initialize the JSON graph object. If you recall, the browser was asking for the JSON graph when we tried to access the data initially. So this is the object that we are creating here. We're also creating the um, users by ID objects, which is, we're calling it users in the JSON graph. So it's an object that holds all the users that are retrieved. Okay, we fix a few typos and then we make it possible for Express to serve static files in the same directory. We do that because we want to bring in the index.html file and the falcor.browser.js files that we created earlier into this folder. Next, we edit the path for the source that we left out before. We edit that to /users because remember that's the route that we're expecting requests to come in on the router. Then we go into the browser and see what results we have for now. We change the path to endpoint in the folder, that's port 4000 index.html, and we check what we have in the console. Remember what we're trying to we're logging, we are console logging the responses that we get. We see an array and it has the paths to each of the individual fields that we request for. And we don't have a response yet because the value is not in the right format that it expects, but we're going to fix that in the next few minutes. So let's proceed to try and retrieve the data for the user from the server and log that in the console. So when we hit that, it should log to the console, and look, we see the user123 with the user object there. So we know that our request is working, it's coming into the router and we're getting data. Now we just have to send that data back to the client, which we're going to do now. We retrieve the user data from the user ID key in the user object. If there's an error, we use the Falcor factory to create an error object and we assign that to the user ID. But if not, we simply check if it's valid. We cycle through the keys that are in the path, that's username, first name, and last name, and we assign that to the user in the JSON graph. Then we send the entire JSON graph back to the client in our return statement. We check the browser again to see what we have when we hit the URL, and look, we have our object but without the balance because the balance is not served by the user service, but we can fix that very quickly. So we do a good old copy and paste to fix that, and then we edit the path to balance instead of what we had before, and then we change the service from the user service to the wallet service, and we should be good to go. We restart the server and let's go and see what we get in the browser. We hit the URL again, but after a few refreshes we see that we have the same thing. How come? Turns out that JSON path, when it has many fields, it treats them as an object, but if it's just one field, it treats it as a string. So because balance is a single field, it's treated as a string, so we have to add an else into that, and we check if it's a string, and if it is, we just use that as the key instead of going through it for each. So that's what we will do. We use the whole user keys string as the key, and we'll send that field into the higher level JSON graph. We restart Node again and see what we have in our browser. So on refreshing, we see that, look, we do have our balance now. It came through and everything is working as expected. So one call from the clients to the API gateway, and the API gateway makes these two asynchronous calls to the background services. So let's try for user 124. Let's see what Isaac Asimov has, where we try to get data for him. So refreshing that, we see an error because the API gateway can now handle the balance path, but when it tries to do that for Isaac Asimov, the wallet service sends a 404 error and it returns an error object. Using model functions in Falcor, we can decide to still display values for what we get. However, I won't do that in this demo. I will leave that for you to try out on your own. Netflix has provided excellent videos and documentation for Falcor, and when you go through them, you'll notice that many of the things I talked about here are lifted directly from that. So check out the GitHub repo, check out the videos and documentation, try working with collections, try handling errors, try intercepting requests and doing transformations on them. Just the other awesome things that Falcor allows you to do. So bye for now. Hope to see you soon in another video. Cheers.